Hey everyone, it's Mr. Win. I just wanted to show you real quick how to add rational numbers. So we're going to be adding a negative number and positive number in number 1 here. So if we look at this, we've got a negative 1/5 plus a positive 3/5. Well, what do you do when the signs are different? There's a trick here. So what we're going to look at first is what are the absolute values of both of these numbers. The absolute value of negative 1/5 is actually just 1/5. The absolute value of 3/5 is 3/5. How do they compare? Well, 1/5 is less than 3/5. So what we can do is we can just subtract the one that has a smaller absolute value from the one that has the greater absolute value. So we are going to do 3/5 minus 1/5. Since the denominators are the same, we can just subtract the numerator. So 3 minus 1 is 2 over a denominator of 5. Now you might be wondering, what sign should my answer have? Should it be positive or negative? Well, if you go back to the beginning and look at these two add-ins, the one that had the greater absolute value right here is a positive number. That means the positive overtakes the negative. So the positive has more power over the negative. So our final answer will be a positive 2/5, or more simply, just 2/5. Number 3, now we have signs that are the same. So these are both negative numbers. That tells me that whatever my answer is going to have a negative sign in front of it. So when you add two numbers that have the same sign, it's actually quite easy. You're simply going to add the absolute values of those numbers, right? So remember that absolute value is always going to be positive. So these are positive now. And I need to find myself a common denominator. Well, this is 1 versus a 7 here. So we need to find a common denominator. In this case, it's going to be 7 for both. So what I'm going to get here is, well, I'm going to have 3 7s still, but then 9 times 7 is 63 over 7. Now I can add them like I did up here, and I'm going to have 66 over 7. Remember, the same denominator. Now, what sign is this answer going to have? Well, since they were both negative to begin with, my answer will be negative. Let me get that. Let me rewrite that. Negative 66 over 7 right here. You might be wondering, can I just leave my answer like that as an improper fraction? Well, yes, in this case you can, because it's as simplified as it can get, but you could also turn it into a mixed number. So how many times can 7 go into 66? It goes into it 9 full times, because 7 times 9 is 63. And I have a remainder of 3 over 7. You'll notice here that I kept the negative sign because I'm adding two negatives. So my answer gets further negative. I actually didn't even need to do all this conversion here. But if I wanted to keep it or write it as an improper fraction, then I would have. Now look at number 5. So number 5, again, they have different signs. So that tells me I need to compare their absolute values, see which one has a smaller one. The absolute value of this one would be 3 3/10, and then this one would be 4 1/3. This is less than this. That means I need to subtract the smaller from the greater. So I'm going to do 4 1/3 minus 3 3/10. And I know that because the one that has the greater absolute value is positive, that my answer will be positive. Now look at this. We can't subtract these because they have different denominators. But we can't subtract them either because they're mixed numbers. So we need to convert them into improper. So the trick here, remember, you can just multiply the denominator by the whole number and then add the numerator. So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus 1 would be 13. So I'm going to have 13 over the same denominator here, 3 minus 10 times 3, which would be 30, plus 3 is 33 over the same denominator. So we can't subtract these now because they have different denominators. I need to find a common denominator. In this case, that means I will have to multiply this by 10 over 10 to get 30, and then this one by 3 and 3. I'm going to go ahead and write on this side. So 13 times 10 is 130 over, and then 3 times 10 is 30, minus 33 times 3 is 99 over 10 times 3, which is, again, 30. Now I have a common denominator. What's 130 minus 99? Well, that's going to be 31 over 30. Since I can't simplify any further, and I know my answer is going to be positive because that's one that had the greater absolute value, then I can leave my answer like this. I could also turn it into a mixed number. 30 goes into 31 one whole time with a remainder of 1 over 30. And that's it. And I know my answer, again, is positive. Now, a tip, just in case you see one that has more than 2 addends, in this case, this has 3 addends, 1, 2, 3, I can use the associative property to break things down and just do 2 at a time. So I would find whatever the sum of these 2 numbers is, and then whatever answer I get here, I'm going to have to add -7 to. And again, just note that these 2 right here have different signs. This one's negative, this one's positive. So you'd have to subtract the smaller one from the one that has the smaller absolute value from the one that has the greater absolute value. So I'd really do 2 and 1/8 minus 2/3. And then my answer, since this one has a greater absolute value and it's negative, my answer is actually going to have a negative sign. And that's it.